Hi everyone, I'm Madeline from the Neo Cyber Institute, and today I'm excited to talk with you about some basic tips that will help you stay more secure online when working from home. This is especially important during COVID-19 when most people are working from home or doing online school. Today I'll be covering password security, phishing attacks, company policies, and VPNs. Our first topic is password security, and our first recommendation is to turn off the Remember Password function. Yes, we are aware that this function makes it extremely easy to log into any account you have in a matter of seconds. However, if you're looking to improve your online security, this is definitely not something you should have on. So your browser is what stores your passwords, and they are oftentimes not stored in a very secure way, though some browsers are better than others. Usually though, they can be easily hacked, and in some cases, browsers allow just about anyone to see the stored passwords you have, especially if they have access to your computer. Now, with all the tips I'm sharing today, you will notice that there's a little bit of a trade-off between efficiency and security, but to minimize this trade-off, you can install a password manager on your device. Password managers can act just like the Save Password function in terms of efficiency at least, except your passwords are encrypted for storage and you need a master password to unlock all your other passwords. Remember though that not all password managers are created equal, and so you definitely have to do some research before deciding on one. This is especially important if you do not want to pay for one and are just looking for a free version. Next up is to update your passwords and avoid using a password more than once. These two go hand in hand because if you're going through your passwords to update them, you might notice that you use one multiple times. It's important to avoid this and that all your passwords are unique, because if a hacker gets your login information to one account, then they can't use that information to log into other accounts of yours and cause more damage. Also, part of updating your passwords is to make sure that you're using a variety of special characters as well as uppercase and lowercase letters. We're not going to go too much into that today, but we might make a future video on best password practices if you all are interested. Also, if you're concerned about remembering these new complex passwords, that's where a password manager can come in handy. Lastly, we have to use two-factor authentication. This is really important because it's essentially just a more secure way to verify your identity. It's great because most services by now do use this, but if you find that you have any passwords or accounts that aren't protected by it, definitely set that up. It just involves sending a code to either a phone number or an email address, so it's kind of like a two-step login, and this makes sure that if someone is trying to gain access to one of your accounts, they would also have to have access to your email or your phone number, which is a lot more difficult. Now we're moving on to phishing, and so you might be wondering, what is phishing? So essentially it's the fraudulent practice of sending emails or phone calls where the sender pretends that they're a company or person that they are not in order to get individuals to reveal personal information. This could include passwords, credit card numbers, etc. Phishing attacks can be very convincing, especially if you aren't being careful, so here's just a list of some things that a hacker could be contacting you about. And notice that they are all real issues that someone could have. However, we have compiled a list of tips on how to figure out if the communication is legitimate. So these pertain mostly to emails, but you could apply the same logic to phone calls or other situations. So first is, if an email or phone call doesn't seem right, it probably isn't if you have to ask yourself that. Consider if you know the sender and if you understand why they're contacting you at this moment. Definitely check to see if you recognize the caller ID or who's actually sending the email, because sometimes it might not match who the person is claiming to be. Second is to reread the contents of an email. Check the greeting, spelling, and language used. Companies like Amazon or Netflix aren't going to be sending you emails that are littered with spelling mistakes or that aren't formal. Also, if the greeting is very general and doesn't use your name, that could be a hint that something's wrong. And if you've received a phone call, you can always listen back to that and see how formal the person is being. If they're being very informal, that could be another sign that something's wrong. And if you're still really unsure, definitely just communicate with the company using contact information you know is real. This can oftentimes just be found on their website. If you realize that you responded to an email or phone call with personal information when you think you shouldn't have, definitely contact the company that you have an account with, tell them what happened, who sent you the email, and what information you gave. Also, follow the steps on the screen. This was taken directly from a government flyer on how to be a little bit more secure online, and we'll have the link to the full flyer in the description below. Next up is company policies, and this one is really simple but important nonetheless, and our first recommendation is to just check for any established security guidelines that your company has for you for remote work and access to company information. So you are really the best judge of whether this is necessary or not, because depending on your job, you may or may not have extra security guidelines. If you know that you're dealing with sensitive information, your company probably requires you to go about your work differently when you're working from home. Then beneath this, I've written trade-off between convenience and security, just because if you have a job where you're handling sensitive information, you could very well be required to make a bigger trade-off between the two. Our last topic of the day is the VPN, the virtual private network. So a VPN allows you to create a secure connection to another network over the internet. Essentially, it is an anonymous middleman that browses for you. So the VPN will greatly increase your security. However, like I talked about on the previous slide, you are going to be the best judge of whether you need a VPN or not based on your job and what information you handle. Then a big question about VPNs is, do they cost anything? The answer is yes, most of the high quality ones do. However, there are free options available. But if you decide on a free option, definitely do your research because there are some not so great ones. Free VPNs tend to share your session details with their partners to make money, so you can see an increase in targeted advertisements while you're using a VPN or even after. This is because VPNs are businesses, and so if you're not paying to have one, they need to make their money some other way. Free VPNs also tend to have a weaker encryption and cause your connection to the internet to be a lot slower. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Please be sure to comment down below any questions you have about phishing, VPNs, etc., because we'd be happy to make more in-depth videos on those topics. Also, subscribe to see more COVID-19 related content in the coming weeks. And as always, please check below in the description to see all of our sources for the video. Thanks again.